You're listening to Short History Shorts audio, where history speaks louder than images. The story of the Roman Republic is often told through wars and conquests, but beneath the clamour of swords and the triumph of legions was a quieter, enduring struggle. One fought not on the battlefield, but in the forum, in the assemblies, and through centuries of political manoeuvring. It was the conflict of the orders, a long and often bitter contest between Rome's patricians, the aristocratic elite, and the plebeians, the broader citizen body. This class struggle, which spanned from 494 to 287 BC, shaped the very foundations of Roman law, governance, and society. To understand the early republic, we must first understand how this conflict unfolded and why its resolution would lay the groundwork for Rome's imperial destiny. When the monarchy was overthrown in 509 BC, Rome established itself as a republic, but one that heavily favoured the patrician class. The patricians, descended from the founding families of Rome, held most of the land, controlled religious institutions, and occupied all the important political offices. The plebeians, on the other hand, farmers, artisans, labourers, were citizens too, and could serve in the army, but they had no political representation and few legal protections. This imbalance sowed deep resentment. By 494 BC, with Rome under threat from neighbouring tribes, the plebeians had had enough. When called to serve in the army again, they instead marched out of the city and set up camp on the Sacred Mount, a move known as the First Secession of the Plebs. Their message was simple: no more fighting for a republic that offered them nothing in return. The patricians, fearing collapse, agreed to a compromise. Thus was created the office of the Tribune of the Plebs, an elected official empowered to protect plebeian rights, including the power to veto actions by magistrates. It was a revolutionary concession. For the first time, plebeians had a voice within the system. But this was only the beginning. In 450 BC, amid further tensions, Rome established the 12 Tables, a written code of laws displayed publicly. While the laws themselves reflected the biases of the patrician class, their existence was a major step. Law was no longer the mysterious domain of the elite. It was visible, fixed, and could be contested. And contest it the plebeians did. Over the following decades, they pushed for reforms that would open magistracies to plebeians, allow intermarriage between classes, and reduce debt bondage. The struggle was not linear. Progress often stalled or regressed, but every advance was hard-won. One of the most significant victories came in 367 BC with the Licinian Sextian laws, which, among other things, mandated that one of the two consuls must be a plebeian. This opened the highest executive office in the Republic to the lower class. It wasn't just about one seat, it was about access to power, prestige, and the mechanisms of state. The following century saw continued fights over land reform, debt relief, and access to priesthoods. The plebeians demanded not just representation but equity. Gradually they secured the right to pass laws binding on the whole population, plebiscita, that had the same weight as laws passed by the patrician Senate. The climax of this long conflict came with the Lex Hortensia of 287 BC, which affirmed the binding power of plebiscita and effectively ended the legal distinction between patrician and plebeian in the eyes of the state. The political struggle had on the surface succeeded. The plebeians had gained access to offices, laws, and influence. Yet Rome's social divisions would persist in other forms, through wealth, patronage, and the enduring influence of old families. But the Republic had been reshaped. The idea that power could be contested and negotiated had taken root. Rome's path from city-state to empire was built on the back of legions, but its political resilience came from this slow, grinding process of internal compromise and reform. The conflict of the orders wasn't just a class war, it was a blueprint for participatory politics, and a reminder that even the most rigid systems can, over time, be bent toward inclusion. This was how the Roman Republic grew, not in a single moment, but across generations of struggle. The conflict of the orders echoes down history not because it was a revolution, but because it was the opposite. It was a prolonged negotiation, an endurance test of politics where violence threatened but rarely erupted into civil war. The Republic survived it and was arguably strengthened by it. But to understand its legacy, we have to explore its consequences. One of the most profound was the development of Roman legal culture. The 12 Tables may have started as a compromise, but they created a tradition of codified law that would ultimately evolve into the vast and sophisticated legal systems of the late Republic and the Empire. The idea that law should be public, understandable and consistent was seeded during this early period. Plebeians, once shut out entirely, became central to Roman administration. The office of the tribune, though originally conceived as a defensive role, grew into a powerful platform. Tribunes could propose legislation, convene the plebeian council, and intervene on behalf of citizens. It was a tool of the people, but also in time a weapon for ambitious politicians. Centuries later, figures like Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, and eventually Julius Caesar, would leverage the tribunate and popular assemblies to challenge the Senate itself. The reforms of the early Republic gave them the means. The plebeians' push for inclusion also altered the structure of Roman religion. Access to priesthoods, once the exclusive realm of patricians, opened over time. Religion and politics in Rome were intertwined. Rituals validated state actions, and auguries determined when battles could be fought or laws passed. Plebeian inclusion in these roles was both symbolic and functional, a statement that the divine will did not speak only to the elite. The military too felt the effects. As plebeians gained land and rights, they became more invested in the state. Service was no longer an obligation, it was a duty of citizens with a stake in Rome's future. This mutual dependency between Rome and its lower classes helped stabilize the Republic during its long wars in Italy and beyond. Still, it's important not to romanticize the outcome. The end of the conflict of the orders did not usher in equality. Wealthy plebeians often assimilated into the aristocracy, forming a new ruling class. The nobiles who controlled Rome through a complex web of family alliances, patronage and influence. Poor plebeians still struggled, often manipulated by elite patrons. The Republic remained oligarchic in structure even as it grew more inclusive in form. But there's power in form. The institutions created during this period, the tribunate, the plebeian council, the legal codes would survive revolutions, dictatorships, and empire. They would provide the scaffolding for both reformers and reactionaries. In time, these structures would be wielded by generals like Marius and Sulla, by orators like Cicero, and by emperors who claimed to defend the rights of the people while consolidating absolute power. The conflict of the orders may have ended in 287 BC, but its legacy endured. It showed that political systems could adapt under pressure. That change didn't have to come through bloodshed. That inclusion, even if flawed or limited, could create resilience. The Republic would face many greater crises in the centuries to come, but it would do so with a constitution forged, in part through this long internal negotiation. When later historians and jurists looked back, they saw in this conflict the seeds of Roman greatness, not just in conquest, but in compromise. You've been listening to Short History Shorts audio, where history speaks louder than images. If you enjoyed this journey through early Republican politics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. More deep dives into ancient civilizations are on the way.